Hi everyone, this is Donny Lowy from Closeoutexplosion.com. I hope you're doing very well today. So if you watched many of my other videos, you well know that I like to focus a lot on the positive aspects of the wholesale and closeout business. I like to encourage people. I like to give people tips on how to buy, on how to sell. And today I'd like to share with you, in a way the opposite. I'd like to give you some of the mistakes that I've seen people make, that I have made when it comes to buying wholesale merchandise. I think the biggest mistake that people make is buying emotionally. And now, what do I mean by that? Let's say I happen to personally like Star Wars. So if I see a clothing lot that has a Star Wars theme to it, I might be very excited to buy it, and I might actually buy it because I like Star Wars, and I'll assume other people like Star Wars. Now, there are a lot of people like Star Wars, but if I don't have any customers who like Star Wars, or I cannot reach any customers who like Star Wars, then I'm simply not going to be able to sell that closeout clothing. On the other hand, let's say I personally I'm not into polo shirts, but I see a really good closeout on polo shirts. If I have an emotional response to the polo shirts and say, look, I wear dress shirts, not polo shirts, and I skip that closeout, I could end up potentially losing out and making a lot of money. So what you want to do is you want to first be able to acknowledge your emotions, because once you acknowledge the emotions, and then at least you can address them, then you could say, okay, now let me be logical about it. In spite of my emotional response to that closeout, in spite of my emotional response to that wholesale deal, is it still objectively a good wholesale deal or closeout deal for me to buy and to resell? Now, how do you answer that question? Well, objectively means having a decision that is based on information and then making a logical decision based on that information. So your intuition could first point you in one direction, but now you want to see if you can actually find any factual reason to go in that direction. So now you can have a great buying decision based on your emotions. Just make sure you can back it up based on fact. So if you see a beautiful dress for sale and you have a dress store, before you buy that dress, you want to make sure that you actually have customers for that dress, and you might yourself not be that excited about that dress, but take your time to think about it. Have you sold a similar dress in the past? Have you seen one of your customers wearing a similar dress? Have you heard customers ask for similar dresses? And sometimes it's worthwhile to take a chance, because even if your emotional intuition leads you in the wrong direction, that might not have been an ideal dress to sell in your store, but if you buy the dress at a low enough price, meaning you buy it substantially below the going retail price for that dress, then you could always mark it down and try to sell it to people at a discount and still make money on that dress. Alright, so let's go to the next step. The next step is other wholesale buying mistakes that people make, and that is buying based just on price. Now, I just want to acknowledge I've made all these mistakes, and unfortunately sometimes I can still make these mistakes, but so I think we could all learn from it, and hopefully we can learn from each other. So another mistake that everyone in the wholesale business has made once at least is buying just on price. What does that mean? Let's say you get offered a lot of clothing, and the clothing is being offered to you at $1 each. So it's very tempting to buy that clothing, because you say to yourself, hey, if the clothing is only $1 each, I could sell it for $2 or $3. What if I sell it for $10? But you have to remember, there's a reason why the clothing is being sold at such a low price. Now, that does not mean that you shouldn't buy clothing if it's priced very low. You just need to know, why is the clothing, or why is the clothes that you're looking at priced at such a low rate? It might be because the owner of the clothing is going out of business. It might be because the owner of that clothing now is a designer, and he or she's now working on the latest styles and doesn't need that older clothing anymore. So there could be a very good reason why the clothing is being sold at such a low price. You need to know that reason. And the thing is, the mistake that happens is it's not about the price, but it's about having an outlet for how to sell that clothing. So if you see clothing being sold at $1 each, if you have a way to sell that clothing, even for $1.50, even for $2 or for $5, that's great. But if, let's say, the clothing happens to be a good legitimate deal, but you just don't have customers for that type of clothing, then you do not want to buy that clothing. And another mistake, which is related to what we just mentioned, is people not buying wholesale deals, including myself, when the price is high, right? I might see a dress where the wholesale price is $50. I might say, wow, that's a lot of money. Who am I going to sell it to? But you know what? If I can sell the dress for $100, then it's fine, right? Then it's worth it to pay $50 for it. And how do you know if it's worth it to pay so much for it? Well, research the market. Go online, go into stores, go to department stores and see how much are those dresses being sold for. So if you see a dress that's being sold in a warehouse, or let's say you come to my warehouse and you see brand name dresses for $25 or $30, before you buy from me, make sure you do your research. And if you can sell those dresses for $50, for $100, for $200, then it's a great deal, right? The key is you want to do your research. So just because the price might seem, higher than what you're used to paying, that does not mean that it's not a good deal, right? As a matter of fact, some of the best deals I've made have been from clothing, which cost me more than when I usually was used to buying. And guess what? For the most part, I was able to sell all of the clothing. Not everything, because I'm only human, and I bought clothing which I couldn't sell, and then I sold it at a loss to my customers, and hopefully, since I sold to them such a low price, they were able to make money with it. And thankfully, I have a decent return rate, so I know that customers come back to my store. By return rate, I mean the percentage of customers who actually come back and buy again. All right, my website is closeoutexplosion.com. Thank you so much, and have a great day.